Hello, everyone. Today, I just felt like reading the story by Mushi Premchand, The Salt Inspector. At one time, the private manufacture of salt was banned by the British government in India. According to the India Salt Act of 1882, tax on salt was increased and only government approved units could collect and manufacture salt. Salt could be manufactured and handled only at official government salt depots with a tax of 140 rupees on each mound, which was equal to 82 pounds. Mahatma Gandhi defied the government, went on the famous Dandi March in 1930, gathering popular support in what was termed the Salt Satyagraha. Today, we buy salt whenever we want, however we want, any quantity we want, without a second thought as to one time how this God given thing, which is a daily necessity for people, was so difficult to procure, and how this changed people's attitudes and temperaments. But then, here is a heartwarming story by Munshi Premchand named The Salt Inspector. When the new department for salt was created and the sale of this God given substance was banned, the business of selling and buying salt began to be done on the sly. Several illegal practices came into being. Some people resorted to bribes, others to clever dealings. Government officials made a lot of money. People from other departments wanted to join this department, regardless of whatever high position they already occupied in their own departments. Even lawyers were tempted to become salt inspectors. This was the time when people thought English education and Christianity went hand in hand. Persian was also much in favor. Those Indians who had read Persian romances and epics could reach some of the highest offices. Munshi Vanshidhar was one such person. He, who, having read the tale of Zuleika's separation from her beloved and believing the love story of Shireen Farhad to be more important than the discovery of America, set out in search of employment. His father was a man of the world. He tried to explain things to his son. You can see the state of affairs in our home. We are groaning under debt. Your sisters are growing tall like wild grass. I am like a tree that is about to fall over at any time. Now, you are the master of this house. Don't give away the thought to the don't give any thought to the position of employment that is like the grave of a saint. Keep your eyes on the offerings and gifts. Look for a job where there is enough extra money to be made. The monthly salary is like the full moon which you see one day, but from the very next day it begins to lessen till it finally disappears. Extra income is like a perennial stream that will never let you go thirsty. Salaries are given by men, that is why they seldom increase. Extra income is God given. That is why there is so much of it. What else can I say to you? You are a learned man. But remember, these things require intelligence. Learn to study human beings, understand their needs, and look out for the right opportunity. And only then do what you consider appropriate. If you are strict with the man who is in trouble, you will make profit. But it is difficult to extract money out of someone who doesn't need your help. Remember my words, they are the sum total of my life's earnings. The father finished his lecture and gave his blessings. Vanshidhar was a dutiful son. He listened carefully to his father and left the house. In the big wide world, he had patience as his friend, intelligence to show him the way, and confidence as his helper. He must have left home on an auspicious moment, for he was immediately appointed as an inspector in the salt department. The salary was good, and the sky was the limit for extra income. When his elderly father heard the good news, his happiness knew no bounds. The moneylender's attitude softened towards the family. Hope sprang afresh. Thorns of envy pierced the neighbors' hearts. It was a winter night. The staff and watchmen of the salt department were drunk. It had been barely 6 months since Munshi Vanshidhar had been posted here. But even in this short time, he had impressed his seniors with his efficiency and perfect manners. The officers trusted him. The Yamuna River flowed about a mile away from the salt office. A bridge of boats was tied over it. Vanshidhar was fast asleep and suddenly he heard the sound of carts crossing the boat bridge and shouts of boatmen. Why would carts be crossing the river at this hour of the night? He wondered. Surely something was amiss. He put on his uniform, put his pistol in his pocket, mounted his horse, and within minutes reached the riverside. He saw a long line of bullock carts crossing the bridge. He shouted, "Whose carts are these?" There was a minute's silence. There was some whispering among the men. A man in the front spoke up. "They belong to Pandit Alapidin." "Who is he?" "He is from Dataganj." Munshi Vanshidhar was surprised. Pandit Alopidin was among the most respected zamindars of this area. He dealt in lakhs of rupees. From the lowest to the mightiest, there was no one in this area who was not indebted to him in one way or the other. He did a variety of businesses and was considered quite a clever person. English officers visited his estate for hunting and enjoyed his hospitality. There were parties and feasting at his home for 12 months in a year. Vanshidhar asked, "Where are the carts going?" The answer was Kanpur. But when he asked what was loaded in them, he was met with complete silence. Vanshidhar's suspicion now became firm. He waited for an answer, then shouted, "Have you all turned deaf? I'm asking you, what is loaded in these carts?" When there was still no answer, he took his horse close to one of the carts and poked his finger in a sack. Now there was no room for suspicion. The sack had lumps of salt crystals. Pandit Alopidin rode his beautifully decorated chariot, partly awake, partly asleep. Suddenly, a couple of nervous looking cart drivers came running up to him and woke him up. They said, Master, the inspector has stopped our carts. He is standing by the riverside and calling you." Pandit Ji was a firm believer in the goddess Lakshmi. He used to say that forget this world, even in heaven it is Lakshmi who reigns supreme. Perhaps he was right. Justice and government are mere toys in the hands of Lakshmi. She can move them around as she chooses. Pandit Ji spoke arrogantly from his reclining position on the chariot. "I am coming." Unhurriedly, he folded a pan for himself. Wrapped in a warm quilt, he went up to the inspector and said, "God bless you, Babuji. Have I committed a crime that my carts have been stopped like this? You should be kindly disposed at least towards us Brahmins." Vanshidhar spoke dryly. "Government orders." Pandit Alopidin laughed and said, "I don't know the government or its orders. You are my government. Between us, it's like a family matter. Are you and I outsiders for each other? You need not have taken the trouble of coming here. It's not as though I can pass this way and forget to make an offering to the god of this ghat. I was about to come and meet you myself. In any case, these sweet words had no effect on Vanshidhar. Riding the wave of honesty was still a new experience for him. He spoke harshly. I am not one of those dishonest types who sell their soul for a little money. You are under arrest. You will have to follow the law. I have no more time for idle talk. Jamadar Badul Singh, I order you to arrest him. Pandit Alopidin stood like a statue. Panic spread among the crowd of cart drivers. For the first time in his life, Panditji had to hear such harsh words. Badlu Singh stepped forward, but he could not dare hold Panditji by the hand. Panditji had never seen duty show such respect towards wealth. He told himself that the inspector was young and inexperienced. He didn't know the value of money. With great humility, he said, Don't do this, Babu Sahib. I will be destroyed. My reputation will be dragged through mud. And what will you gain by humiliating me? We are not strangers to each other. Vanshidhar spoke in a harsh voice again. I don't wish to listen to such things. The support that Alopidin had taken for a rock seemed to slip from under him. His self respect and his sense of superiority were shaken, but he still had faith in the power of money. He addressed his manager. Present Babu Sahib with 1,000 rupees. He is like a hungry lion right now. Vanshidhar spoke angrily. Forget 1,000, even 1 lakh rupees cannot make me step away from the right path. Such senseless obstinacy and sacrifice for the sake of duty annoyed Alopidin. The two powers now stood face to face. Money began to jump higher and higher to attack duty. For 1,000, the sum was raised to 5, 10, 15, and finally 20,000 rupees. But duty displayed godlike bravery in the face of this army of thousands and stood resolute and immovable like a mountain. Finally, in despair, Aladdin cried, No more, I can offer you no more, you can do whatever you wish. Vanshidhar once again called out to his Jamadar. Silently cursing the inspector, Badlu Singh moved towards Pandit Alopidin. Pandit nervously took a few steps backwards. With utmost humility, he said, Babu Sahib, for God's sake, have mercy on me. I'm willing to make a deal for 25,000 rupees. It's impossible. For 30,000? No, never. Not even for 40,000? Not 40,000, not even 40 lakh. Badlo Singh, arrest this man. I don't wish to hear another word. Duty crushed wealth under its feet. Alopidin saw a big built man coming towards him with handcuffs. He looked all around him with hopeless eyes. Then he fainted and fell to the ground. The world slept, but its tongue was awake and wagging. By the morning, young and old alike spoke only of this. Everyone had something to say about Panditji. Everyone was busy heaping abuses on him as though with his arrest, crime had been removed from society. The milkman who sold water instead of milk, the officials who filled out false account books, the clerks who travelled without tickets, the merchants who did business with false papers, they were all behaving as though they were superior godlike beings. The next day, when a handcuffed Pandit Alopidin, his heart filled with regret and sadness, his head bent with shame, reached the courts, the entire city rushed to the spot. Seldom had such an eager crowd shown up for fairs or even festivals. People pushed their way into the courtroom in such large numbers that you couldn't tell where the walls ended and the roof began. But once inside the courtroom, it was a different matter. Pandit Alopidin was the lion king of this vast jungle. Here, court officials were his devout followers, clerks, his humble servants, lawyers, his obedient slaves, and the peons, orderlies, etc., in his pocket. People ran from all directions upon seeing him come inside the courtroom. They were surprised not by what he had done, but by the fact that he had got caught by the law. How can such a man who has the money to solve all his problems and a glib tongue to get him out of any tricky situation get caught like this? Everyone walked up to him to express their sympathies. An army of lawyers was selected with great care. The battle lines between duty and wealth were drawn up in the battlefield of law. Vanshidhar stood quietly. Truth was his only strength and clear speech his only weapon. There were witnesses, but clearly wobbling under the influence of greed. Vanshidhar could sense that the law would not be fair to him. This was a court of law, but its officials were under the influence of prejudice. What do law and prejudice have in common? Nothing. The case was immediately dismissed. The deputy magistrate wrote in his order, "The proofs presented against Pandit Alopidin are baseless and false. He is a great man. It's beyond one's imagination that a man like him would do any such thing for petty profit." Although it is not fully Inspector Vanshidhar's fault either, it is a matter of regret that his thoughtlessness and arrogance have put a good man to so much trouble. While we are happy that he is so conscientious about his work, the corruption in the salt department has made him act in this thoughtless way. He needs to be more careful in future. The lawyers heard the verdict and jumped with joy. A smiling Alopidin came out of the court. His well-wishers had thrown money about. A sea of generosity had sprung up. Its waves had shaken the foundations of justice. When Vanshidhar stepped out of the court, he was met with a rain of sarcasm. The peons bent low in mock obedience. But at this moment, every cruel word, every unkind gesture simply fed the fire of pride burning inside him. Had he won the case, he might not have walked with such pride as he displayed now. Today he could sense something sadly lacking in the world around him. Law and learning, the grand sounding titles, the long beards, the flowing robes, nothing seemed to fit to deserve true respect. Vanshidhar had taken up the fight against wealth. It was imperative that he pay the price for it. In less than a week, his suspension orders arrived. He was punished for following his duty. Heartbroken, overcome with sadness and regret, he returned home. His father had been grumbling for days. Despite all the lectures, he has not paid heed. In my old age, I have to listen to the taunts of the grocer and the moneylender while he wants to live only on his salary and refuses extra income. After all, I also worked. I didn't occupy a high position, but I worked and did my best. Look at him. He wants to be honest. It's a case of wanting to light a lamp in the mosque when there is darkness at home. I pity such thinking. What a waste of all that study and learning. When Vanshidhar was suspended and returned home, the poor old father's despair welled up. He said to his son, I feel like banging my head against a wall and yours too. Then he said so many harsh things that had Vanshidhar not removed himself from that spot, his anger would have known no bounds. His mother was sad too. Her dream of going on pilgrimage to Jagannath and Rameshwar now lay shattered. His wife was so angry that she did not speak to him for several days. A week passed. It was evening. Vanshidhar's father sat taking the Lord's name on his beads when a gaily decorated chariot stopped at their door. It had green and pink curtains and a pair of handsome bullocks with blue string garlands around their neck and copper coated horns. Several servants with stout sticks on their shoulders were in attendance. Pandit Alopidin stood in the doorway. Vanshidhar's father ran to greet him, bending low and talking sweetly all the while. It's our good fortune that you have come to our home. We are so ashamed that we cannot even look up at you. What are we to do? We are unfortunate in having this good for nothing son. God should have left us childless instead of giving us such a son. Alapuddin said, No, brother, don't say such things. Munshiji expressed surprise. What else can I say about such a son? Alopidin spoke in loving tones. There are so many righteous people in the world who have sacrificed everything for the sake of bringing a good name to their family. Then Pandit Alopidin addressed Vanshidhar. Please don't take my words for flattery. I don't have to take all this trouble just to please you. That night, you had taken me under arrest because you had the right to do so. Today, I have come to you of my own free will. I have seen thousands of wealthy people and have dealt with many officials, but you are the only person who has defeated me. I managed to turn them all into my slaves. Allow me to make a humble request. Vanshidhar had got up to greet Alopidin the moment he had seen him approaching, but his gesture had been marked with dignity. He thought Alopidin had come to taunt and mock him. He had made no attempt at offering an apology. He glanced quickly in Panditji's direction and found goodwill written all over his face. Pride was replaced by embarrassment and made Vanshidhar bow his head. A little shyly, he said, It's your generosity that makes you say this. I apologize for my brashness and bad manners. I was chained by my sense of duty, or else I am your slave. Your wish is my command. Alopidin spoke with humility. At the river bank that night, you wouldn't listen to my request, but today you must. Vanshidhar said, I can be of no use to you now, but whatever I can do for you, I promise to do wholeheartedly. Alopidin took out a stamped paper and put it before Vanshidhar. Please accept this post and sign on this document. I am a Brahmin, and till you fulfill my request, I shall not move from your doorstep. Munshi Vanshidhar read the paper and his eyes filled up with tears of gratitude. Pandit Alopidin had appointed him as permanent manager of all his properties, an annual salary of 6,000 rupees, a daily allowance, a horse to ride on, a bungalow to live in, and plenty of servants at no extra cost. Moved, Vanshidhar spoke in a trembling voice. Panditji, I don't have the words to sufficiently praise your generosity, but I'm not fit to occupy such a high post. Alopidin laughed and said, at this moment, I need an unfit person like you. Vanshidhar spoke in a serious tone now. I am your devoted servant. It would be my great fortune to serve a well known, well regarded person such as you. But I have neither intelligence and learning nor the temperament that make up for these lacks. For such an important post, you need an experienced person. Alopidine took a pen out of a pen case and handed it to Vanshidhar, saying, I need neither bookish learning, nor experience, nor efficiency. I have seen enough proof of the importance of these qualities. Now, by a stroke of good fortune and good timing, I have come across that pearl in front of which the gleam of ability and learning fades. Take this pen and without further ado, sign on this document. My only prayer to the Almighty God is that you may always remain that dry, brash, harsh, but disciplined and upright inspector that I first met beside the river. Vanshidhar's eyes became wet with tears. His heart could not contain so much kindness. He looked once again towards Panditji with respect and admiration. Then, with a trembling hand, he signed the document. A delighted Alupidin embraced Vanshidhar. Thank you. I do hope you enjoy the story as much as I did. See you.